The world is building a new kind of intelligence. We call it AI. This intelligence is powerful. It can learn, it can create, it can solve problems we once thought impossible. But this new power comes with a great and growing hunger. It needs electricity, a lot of it. For artificial intelligence to think, it must consume vast amounts of energy. This simple fact is creating a challenge for our entire world. That challenge grows with each passing day as our ambitions for AI expand. Just a few years ago, the racks that hold these powerful computer brains used a modest amount of power. A single cabinet might need 10 kilowatts. 10 kilowatts. The energy used by a few homes. Today, the game has changed completely. The new generation of AI chips are incredibly dense and power-hungry. A single rack can now demand 100 kilowatts or even more. This is an order of magnitude increase. Entire data center campuses are now being planned to consume not just megawatts, but hundreds of megawatts of continuous power. Many have looked to the sky for answers. They see the sun and the wind as our clean energy future, and they are not wrong. Solar panels and wind turbines are remarkable technologies. They capture the free and abundant energy that surrounds us, turning it into electricity without producing carbon emissions. Many of the world's largest technology companies have made huge investments in these renewables. They have built vast solar farms and wind installations to power their data centers. This has been a noble and necessary step forward, but for the massive, non-stop needs of a gigawatt-scale AI campus, these sources have a fundamental weakness. They are intermittent. The sun does not shine at night. The wind does not always blow. This is not a flaw in the technology, it is simply the nature of our planet. For a home or a small business, this variability can be managed. But for an AI data center that must run complex calculations 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, any interruption is a critical failure. The work stops. The investment is wasted. The conventional solution to this problem is storage. We can use giant batteries to store excess energy when the sun is shining and the wind is blowing. Then we can release that stored energy when our renewable sources go quiet. The problem is one of scale. To back up a 1 gigawatt data center for just a few hours requires a battery system of immense size and cost. To provide power through several cloudy or calm days would require a battery installation costing billions of dollars and covering thousands of acres of land. This creates a new set of problems. The cost becomes prohibitive. The land required becomes enormous. The supply chains for the materials needed to build these massive batteries, like lithium and cobalt, are already under strain. Furthermore, connecting these sprawling renewable farms and their battery systems to the grid is a slow and complex process. In many places, the queue to get a new large-scale power project connected can take years. For the fast-moving world of AI, this is too long to wait. We need a different approach. So, if we cannot always rely on the sky, perhaps we should look down. Deep beneath our feet lies an energy source of unimaginable power. It is the primordial heat of the Earth itself. This heat is constant. It has been there for billions of years, and it will be there for billions more. For decades, we have tapped into this heat in a limited way through traditional geothermal power. We drill down to find hot water, steam, which we use to turn turbines and generate electricity. This has been effective, but on a relatively small scale. But there is another, much more powerful form of geothermal energy. It is found in the hottest places on our planet, near the boundaries of tectonic plates, above chambers of molten rock, magma. If you drill deep enough, you can find water heated to temperatures above 400 degrees Celsius. At this temperature and under immense pressure, water no longer behaves like a liquid, a gas. It enters a fourth state of matter. It becomes a supercritical fluid.
A supercritical fluid is a strange and powerful thing. It is as dense as a liquid, but flows as freely as a gas. It holds an enormous amount of energy, far more than an equivalent amount of normal steam. Tapping into this supercritical water is like drilling into a high-pressure boiler created by nature itself. The energy density is revolutionary. It means that a single well, drilled into the right location, can produce 5 to 10 times more power than a traditional geothermal well. This is a game changer. This is the core idea of the tectonic cloud. We can build our data centers directly on top of this immense and reliable power source. It is baseload power. That means it runs continuously, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, without interruption. It does not depend on the weather or the time of day.
What would one of these tectonic power plants look like? It is different from what many people imagine. It is not about bringing magma to the surface. It is about carefully bringing the heat to the surface. The most advanced designs use a concept called a closed-loop system. Imagine a giant sealed U-shaped pipe called a downhole heat exchanger drilled deep into the hot rock. A working fluid, perhaps even water, or a special fluid like supercritical carbon dioxide, is pumped down one side of the pipe. As this fluid travels deep underground, it passes through the zone of extreme heat. It absorbs the thermal energy from the rock, becoming incredibly hot and energized, all without ever touching the surrounding geology. The fluid then flows back up the other side of the pipe to the surface. At the top, it passes through a heat exchanger, transferring its energy to a secondary loop that drives a turbine. The turbine spins a generator and electricity is created. The now cooler working fluid is then pumped back down to start the cycle all over again. This closed-loop design has many advantages. First, it is clean. Because the working fluid is always contained within the sealed pipe, nothing is released into the environment. There is no risk of contaminating groundwater or releasing gases into the atmosphere. Second, it is efficient. By choosing the right working fluid and designing the system carefully, engineers can capture the deep heat and convert it into electricity with remarkable efficiency. The system is a self-contained, continuous engine powered by the planet. This approach also enhances safety. One of the concerns with some older geothermal technologies was the potential to cause minor earthquakes, known as induced seismicity, by injecting or removing large amounts of water from the ground. A closed-loop system minimizes this risk because it is not fracturing rock or altering the local water pressure in the same way. It is a more gentle way of borrowing the Earth's heat. It's a quiet, respectful partnership with the immense power that lies beneath us. This incredible energy source is not found everywhere. It is concentrated in specific places on our planet. These are the geologically active regions, where the Earth's tectonic plates meet, where the crust is thin, where magma is closer to the surface. These volcanic corridors form a network of potential power stations, a ring of fire that circles the Pacific, and rift valleys that are slowly tearing continents apart. These are the places where we can build the tectonic cloud. Iceland is a prime example. The entire island is a volcanic hotspot sitting atop the mid-Atlantic ridge, a place where the North American plate and the Eurasian plate diverge. Iceland has been a pioneer in geothermal energy for decades. At projects like Krafla, the Iceland Deep Drilling Project has accidentally drilled into rock near magma, proving that these extreme temperatures are accessible. They have learned invaluable lessons about how to manage this powerful resource, making the country a natural laboratory for this technology. Another key location is the East African Rift Valley. This is a place where the African continent is slowly splitting in two. This geological activity brings immense heat close to the surface. Kenya has already become a world leader in geothermal energy, with its Olkaria field being one of the largest geothermal complexes on Earth. The potential in this region is immense, offering a path for African nations to become leaders in providing clean, reliable power for the digital age. In the United States, there are also significant hotspots. The Salton Sea in Southern California is a tectonically active area with one of the largest geothermal resources in the country. The Cascade Range, stretching from Northern California to British Columbia, is a chain of volcanoes with enormous underlying heat. These locations are often in remote areas, but they are not disconnected. Many are already near major fiber optic cables, the digital highways that connect data centers to the rest of the world. To reach this deep, supercritical heat, we must solve one of the great engineering challenges of our time. We must learn to drill effectively and safely into an environment that is as hostile as deep space. The temperatures can exceed 400 degrees Celsius, hot enough to melt lead. The pressures are thousands of times greater than at the surface. At these extremes, conventional drilling equipment made of steel would soften and fail. We need new tools and new techniques. Researchers and engineers are developing innovative solutions, new drill bits made from super-hard alloys, ceramic drill bits built for heat. They are designing systems that pump high-pressure cooling fluids or muds down the drill hole to protect the equipment. Some are even exploring radical new contactless drilling methods, high-power lasers vaporizing rock, millimeter wave systems vaporizing rock. Drilling is only the first part of the challenge. We must also ensure that these wells are safe and stable for decades of operation. This requires a new level of monitoring and control. One of the most promising technologies involves embedding fiber optic cables along the entire length of the well casing. These cables act as a nervous system for the well. They can detect tiny changes in temperature, pressure, and strain in real time, giving operators a complete picture of what is happening thousands of feet below the ground. This constant stream of data allows for a proactive approach to safety. If the sensors detect a potential issue, like a small increase in seismic activity or a change in fluid pressure, the system can automatically adjust. It could slow down the flow of fluid or make other subtle changes to maintain stability. The well casings themselves are works of advanced engineering, often using a double wall design with specialized metal alloys that can resist corrosion and immense pressure. This combination of smart monitoring and robust construction is how we can manage the abyss safely. When we consider a new source of energy, two critical questions always arise. How much does it cost? And how much space does it take? On both of these fronts, supercritical geothermal offers compelling advantages for powering large-scale AI. While the initial investment in deep drilling is high, the long-term economics are very favorable. The fuel, the Earth's heat, is free. This means that once the plant is built, the operating costs are very low and predictable for decades. Let's compare this to the alternative of solar or wind paired with massive battery storage. The upfront cost of a gigawatt-scale solar farm with enough batteries to guarantee 24/7 power is astronomical. The batteries themselves have a limited lifespan and will need to be replaced, adding a huge future expense. Supercritical geothermal, on the other hand, has a high initial drilling cost, but then provides steady power for 30 years or more with just routine maintenance. The levelized cost of energy, the total cost over the plant's lifetime, is projected to be highly competitive, potentially cheaper than almost any other form of firm, clean power. The savings in land use are even more dramatic. To generate 1 gigawatt of power, a solar farm might require tens of thousands of acres. A wind farm would need even more space, spread out over a vast area. A supercritical geothermal plant, by contrast, has a tiny physical footprint. Because the energy is so concentrated, a handful of wells on a few hundred acres can produce the same gigawatt of power. This is a critical advantage in a world where land is a precious and often contested resource. There is another powerful economic benefit. By building the data center right next to the power plant, we create a perfectly integrated system. We can use the same infrastructure for cooling. The waste heat from the servers can be managed more efficiently. This leads to a much better power usage effectiveness, or PUE. A typical data center might have a PUE of 1.2, meaning 20% of its power is used for overhead. A volcanic data center could achieve a PUE close to 1.02, an almost perfect efficiency that translates into millions of dollars in energy savings every year. The vision of a global network of volcano-powered data centers is ambitious. It will not happen overnight. It requires a clear, step-by-step plan. We can think of this as a roadmap to 2035. 3 distinct phases map the path forward. Each phase builds on the one before it, moving from initial testing to full-scale global deployment. This journey requires patience, investment, and collaboration. Phase 1, Pilot, 2024-2028, era of pilot validation. Sites, Iceland, Kenya, United States. Small teams pushing deep drilling and closed-loop systems. Goal, prove core technologies, not powerful data centers. Testing new drill bits, validating sensor systems, demonstrating safe, reliable, supercritical geothermal operation over time. Phase 2, commercial scaling, 2028-2031. First commercial scale plants are built, modest at first, 50 to 100 MW facilities powering a single data hall, refining the engineering, streamlining the supply chain, driving down costs through repetition and learning. Investors and major cloud companies begin to commit. Phase 3, global mesh, 2031-2035, gigawatt-scale AI super sites in volcanic corridors worldwide, hubs connected by high-speed fiber optic cables, a resilient, distributed tectonic cloud providing clean, constant, massive power for AI for generations. Technology alone is not enough. A project of this scale touches on an element that is even more important: people. Building these facilities in volcanic regions, often environmentally sensitive, home to local and indigenous communities. To succeed, this endeavor must be guided by a strong ethical framework from the very beginning. It must be a partnership, not an extraction. Before the first drill ever touches the ground, there must be open and honest engagement with all stakeholders. Indigenous communities, who have lived on these lands for generations, have rights and a deep knowledge of the local environment that must be respected. Their free, prior, and informed consent is essential. Local communities must see a tangible benefit: jobs, shared revenue, access to cheaper, cleaner power for their own use. Environmental groups must be brought in as partners. Regulators and governments must create clear and efficient permitting processes while maintaining strict safety and environmental standards. The old rules may not be suitable. We need new frameworks tailored to deep geothermal energy. This is an opportunity for governments in places like Kenya, Iceland, Indonesia,